How y'all doing today? It's your boy Jermaine from Eat Right Guys Nutrition and Fitness, back with another video. And somebody left a pretty good comment on one of my older videos that I want to address in this one. And so the comment was, can you make a video explaining your experience with taking chemistry courses? And so I think this is a good topic to talk about, especially if there's like a student in undergrad that may be taking chemistries and they're struggling and feeling discouraged and thinking to themselves, if I can't pass this class, how can I even become a dietitian? So I'm gonna break down my story of how I got through my chemistry classes at LSU back in from 2008 to 2012. So in order to get my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics, I had to take a total of 4 chemistry classes. I had to take 2 general chemistries. I took both of those the first and the second semester of my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I had to take organic chemistry. And my junior year, I had to take biochemistry. And I have to say, those chemistry classes were probably the hardest classes that I had to take in undergrad. And I can kind of just break down the story of the first semester of general chemistry. I remember, I think after like the second week of that chemistry class, I felt like we covered everything I learned in high school in those 2 weeks. And I remember like the first day, the teacher, she actually sold us her notes. So basically like it was like a binder of her notes, and while we were in class and she was teaching the lectures, we had to like kind of write in some of the things that she was talking about. And it was just, I guess, an easier way for us to know exactly what to study for the exam. And then we had the textbook. But I really struggled in that class. Like, for some reason, chemistry just didn't jive with my brain. I couldn't really understand it. I wasn't really doing well on the quizzes. I wasn't doing well on the homework because the quizzes were straight out of the textbook. And I couldn't figure out even like the notes that I took in class. It didn't really make sense to me. And I remember I was like really struggling. I wasn't even sure how I was going to pass that class. And I was like, man, this is my first real science class of my college career. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this. And so I ended up going to tutoring sessions. So after every class, I would go to the tutoring hall, and tutors there would actually help me with my homework and they would help me with my quizzes. If it wasn't for that, I would have probably made like a D or a C in that class, but I could not get that chemistry, man. Like I literally had to go after every class to get tutoring just so I can do the quizzes. And then once we got to the point where we had to take our tests, I kind of understood it for the most part. I would make like a B or a C, but without tutoring, there's no way I would pass it. So that was the first semester. I ended up making like a B the first semester, my first general chemistry. And then the second semester, when I had to take my second general chemistry, it was crazy because I had the same professor. So I kind of knew how things were going and I already had my strategy. I already knew I'm going to need to go to the tutoring center. So I did that. So I had the tutors basically doing my homework for me and my quizzes, and I was able to squeak by on my tests. And I remember when I got to the final of that second general chemistry, that was probably the worst I've ever done on a test. Out of probably like, I can't even remember how many questions it was. Let's say it was 50 questions. I probably knew like 5 questions on that test. I couldn't retain the information, and I don't know how I passed that class. So the 2 general chemistries, in my opinion, were the hardest chemistries of my undergrad. And everybody that I know struggled with it. And so now let's go into my sophomore year, organic chemistry. Organic chemistry, in my opinion, was a little easier than the general chemistries. You had to do a lot of drawing, a lot of different structures and stuff like that. But still, I was struggling at first. And I already knew from the first chemistry classes, I need some tutoring. So in that class, the professor had a teaching assistant, a TA or whatever, and she would actually host study classes. So after every class, she would do like a study period, and we basically would go over the homework and everything we learned in that class. And for some reason, I couldn't understand it when the professor taught it during class, but when the teacher's assistant taught it, it all made sense to me. And so when I got to my homeworks and like the tests, I had so much practice in those study sessions that I ended up making an A in the class. But without tutoring, without those extra sessions, there's no way I would have passed that exam or that class. And so now going into my junior year, I had to take biochemistry. I already knew biochemistry was going to be a beast, but unfortunately, they didn't have a teacher's assistant, and they didn't really have any. I didn't even go to any tutoring sessions for this class, so I was kind of on my own. And I would study, and the teacher, she had her own notes. She's like, I don't know why these teachers, I don't even know if it's legal for these teachers to actually sell their notes, but you have to pay like $60 for a binder. And I would just study based off of that binder. And I was making like D's on the test. Like it was like 4 tests the whole semester. The first 2 tests, I made like low D's. I didn't know what to expect. I felt like the stuff that was on her exam, that was in her notes that we took in class, the test was completely different. And then she had concepts to where on the test, like if you just memorized all the material, you weren't gonna pass her test, because she would change things up to where like she would say, draw an amino acid. Well, if you kind of memorize all the amino acids, all the 20 amino acids, you would miss that question, because she would make a fake amino acid to the point where you had to kind of know, you had to comprehend everything to draw. If that makes any sense. You basically couldn't just memorize. You had to actually comprehend what you were learning to pass her exams. And I was like, man, this is crazy, because I have to pass this exam, I have to pass this class to get to my senior level nutrition courses. And so I ended up having to drop biochemistry the first semester. I had to drop it. I was making a low D, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to pass this class. And so I remember going into the third test, I had already dropped the course, but I knew I was going to have to take this lady again, because she was the only one that taught this biochemistry. So even though I dropped the course, I still went to class and took notes, because I was like, it's going to be easy if I already have the notes for the next semester. Now, all I got to do is sit in class and listen and not be distracted with taking notes, because I'm like, I think that could be a reason why I'm not understanding it. So I did that. I stayed in class. And to be honest with you, I almost took that third test, even though I wasn't registered in the class anymore, just so I can see what was on that test, but I chickened out. But even after the third test, I stayed the whole semester. So when it came to that second semester, when I had to repeat it, I already had all the notes. I already knew what was going to be on the test, the first 2 tests. And then I was really able to study. Like if I would have studied how I studied that second semester of biochemistry, I probably would have made straight A's in college. Like I literally read the book, like the chapters, like 3 times before the test. If there was a concept that I didn't know, I would go to my biology book. I would go on the internet. I wanted to make sure I dot my I's and cross all my T's. And I ended up making an A in that class. So that was it. Once I did that, then senior year, you take like your medical nutrition therapies, which I struggle with that as well. But all in all, that's basically how it was taking chemistry classes in undergrad. I struggled with all 4 of my chemistry classes. If it wasn't for tutoring, there's no way I would have passed them. And so if you're an undergrad and you're struggling with the organic chemistry, biochemistry, or even the general chemistries, don't be discouraged. You don't even need to know this information to be a dietitian. Right now, if I was to go back to school, I would have to get tutoring to pass these classes. None of these concepts that I learned in general chemistry and organic chemistry, I don't use any of that stuff right now as a dietitian. So it's just basically stuff that you got to take to kind of push you forward. But it is what it is. So like I said, if you're feeling discouraged, find a tutor, just make it out of there. Even if it's a C, you just got to pass it. Just because you don't understand it does not going to mean you're going to be a bad dietitian in the future. So hopefully this video helps some of you out, especially the person that left that comment. I'll see y'all with the next video.